On the 5th of April 1943, three Brazilian fishermen saw something very unusual. 9 miles off the coast of Para, they spotted a raft with a singing Chinese man waving a dirty shirt over his head. The man was Poon Lim, and he had just spent the last 133 days lost at sea. This is the story of the man who survived the impossible. Poon Lim was born on the 8th of March 1918 in a peaceful family fishing in the Beibu Gulf port. But then as the Japanese invasion of China in the late 1920s rolled around, Lim's family wasn't safe anymore, so they moved to Malaysia where the family continued fishing. But after a while, Lim got bored of the fishing lifestyle. He thought it was boring and unfulfilling, so he left his family and went to go work as a cabin boy in the Great Britain Merchant Navy. Then in 1937, Lim decided to move to Hong Kong to work as a mechanic. But then only 4 years later, in 1941, another Japanese war was on the horizon, so Lim went to go work on the sea again. In the following year, Lim found himself on the Ben Lomond ship. It was set to sail from Cape Town to Suriname, and then from Suriname to New York. On the 10th of November 1942, the Ben Lomond started its journey from Cape Town. The ship contained 44 crew members, 8 gunmen and 2 unidentified. So a total of 54 people were on board the ship. The route the Ben Lomond would be sailing through was regularly patrolled by German submarines. This was a problem because the ship wasn't heavily armed, and if any hostile ships would approach, they were doomed. At around 2 p.m. on a Monday, 13 days after setting sail from Cape Town, the Ben Lomond was spotted by a 250-foot German submarine, where it almost immediately shot 2 highly explosive torpedoes towards the Ben Lomond. The Germans were only a few hundred meters away when they shot at the Ben Lomond. 53 of the 54 people on board the ship died from the explosion or drowned right after. By some stroke of luck, Poon Lim was able to grab a life jacket and swim away from the sinking Ben Lomond. But now Poon Lim was all alone on the Atlantic Ocean, 250 miles away from the shore, and he had no idea what he was about to be facing. He swam for hours, and if Lim hadn't already been lucky enough, he swam by an unoccupied 8x8 foot raft, which was equipped with some essential tools for survival. It contained a can of fresh water containing 12 gallons, 6 boxes of hardtack, 2 pounds of chocolate, 10 cans of pemmican, 5 cans of evaporated milk, 1 bottle of lime juice, and 1 can of massage oil. It also had flares, 2 smoke pots, and a flashlight. Lim didn't think that he would have to wait long for rescue to arrive, since the route's schedule was known. He still had this lingering feeling that, what if I have to stay out here for a long time? So he started rationing his food and water. And whenever it rained, he used his tarp to catch rainwater to drink. Lim found some copper wire on the raft, and since he grew up as a fisherman, he knew that this copper wire could save his life. Lim then made a fishing hook out of copper wire and he started fishing. It didn't take him long to catch his first fish, since he was a good fisher. He then saved its head, skin and bones to catch even more fish. And he even let some of the fish's meat dry out in the sun so that he could eat it later. Suddenly, Lim saw the skies darkening. For the following days and weeks, Lim was battling with heavy rains and winds, and after the storms had settled, Lim had no luck catching fish. So his last option was to try and catch the seagulls that landed on the raft, which he did, but he couldn't get himself to eat them, so he let the meat dry out in the sun and only ate it when it was fully dry. He then took the uneatable parts and used it as fishing bait. He finally started catching some fish again, and even some small sharks. Lim was a very poor swimmer, which meant that water was very dangerous for him. If he fell into the water, he would most likely die. So sometimes, when he caught sharks, he would have to fight to stay on the raft because of its slippery wooden floor. The days were long and horrible for him. He was sunburned, thirsty, hungry, and extremely seasick. Finally, after so long, Lim could see a boat approaching. He was waving his hand over his head and was calling for help in English. The boat had gotten so close to Lim, he could even throw small pieces of wood onto the boat. But before Lim had realized it, the boat wasn't there to save him. It just sailed right past him. Lim thought it was because he was Chinese, but it was more likely that they thought he was a Japanese sailor. It was a well-known strategy for submarines to place a fake survivor in range of their shooting so that they could shoot down the people who tried to save the fake survivor. That's why boats were strictly forbidden for trying to save anyone, no matter what. Not long after, a group of US Navy planes flew just above him. What even dropped the buoy to Lim, which seemed like they would return to find him, but sadly, a storm swept by and washed the buoy away before the crew could return. Lim, who hadn't had any contact with the outside world, actually spotted a German submarine, but they didn't help him. They just stared at him while Lim drifted away. It could very well have been the same submarine that shot down the Ben Lamont. Lim had lost all hope for survival and was beginning to accept his fate. But then on the 5th of April 1943, Lim saw 3 fishermen looking at him in the distance. So he quickly started waving his shirt over his head to signal for help. It had been 133 days since Poon Lim had gotten lost at sea. That day he set a new world record, which he later said that he hoped no one would ever break. Some of Lim's survival strategies even ended up being used in the Royal Navy. Lim ended up living till he was 72 and died on the 4th of January 1991. He will forever be remembered as a survival hero. Go watch this video next. Oh, wait, no, this is our first video, so I guess just, I don't know, subscribe.